You must think I must be in some third world country.
Whether you agree with Joe Biden or not, he was right on when at LaGuardia Airport he noted, "I must be in some third world country." In a country as rich as ours, it's hard to believe that many parts of it can look like the developing world. From the pre-renovated LaGuardia Airport to Detroit, or from Chicago to San Francisco, some parts of this country are falling apart. Leading the pack is Jackson, Mississippi. And let's be real, Mississippi is hardly a bastion of tourism and excitement. It is routinely ranked as the 50th worst state to live in, and there are more jokes about the state being backwards than there are about Alabama. Or maybe that's a tie. The state is famous for bearing the namesake of the most famous river in the country, but that is eclipsed by its fame for all the wrong reasons, like the acquittal of Emmett Till's murderers to having one of the nation's lowest life expectancies. And its capital city offers no redeeming qualities. From crumbling infrastructure and crime to government corruption and urban decay, it's hard to believe that you are still in the United States when traveling through Jackson. In this video, we'll look at the decline of Jackson and the top 7 reasons that make it less than ideal, to put it politely. Number 7 is for sure it's crime. It's ranked a 4 out of 100 for safety, meaning that it's safer than only 4% of cities of similar size. The crime rate is 3 times the state average and several points higher than the national average. The homicide rate is 14 times the national homicide rate. Mississippi's Capitol Police Department, created to protect state buildings, has become Jackson's de facto second police department. This has dramatically expanded the city's police force. While some welcome the additional help, others believe the additional police feed into a racist narrative, since roughly 83% of the city is black. For the second straight year, Jackson has been named the homicide capital of the U.S. compared to cities of similar size. So take a back seat, St. Louis, because Jackson is giving you a run for your money in all the wrong ways. Despite it still topping the murder charts, crime has been dropping slightly over the past few years, so maybe there's hope on the horizon. Number 6 is water pollution. Like Flint, Michigan, Jackson has a water problem. As of last year, many Jackson residents refuse to use the city's water due to an ongoing lead contamination and nasty discoloration. In February of 2023, it was revealed that Jackson homes that were not even under a water boil advisory still had contaminated and discolored water. Some of the sources of this contamination trace back to storms that flooded rivers, and thanks to crumbling infrastructure, which we will get to later, the drinking water supply was contaminated. Just when it seems like the water's back to normal, either the boil advisory is extended or is altogether abandoned, despite questionably colored water. Speaking of crumbling infrastructure, let's get to number 5. While the potholes are hard to ignore, the biggest infrastructure crisis is definitely linked to the water supply. In August 2022, a state of emergency was declared in the city because its infrastructure failed to supply water to most of its residents for several days. The lack of running water was linked to pump failures at the city's water treatment plants, which, to put it nicely, are aging. But not aging nicely like a fine wine, just aging. The city is trying to combat the problem. Just last year, Jackson's mayor secured $800 million in aid to help the failing infrastructure of the city. As if the water wasn't bad enough, the roads leave little to be desired. Jackson was recently awarded as the 10th worst roads in America. There are actually maps of the worst roads in the city chronicling the potholes, crumbling asphalt, and sharp dips into the shoulder. This is a harsh reality for this capital city. Number 4 is its legacy of racism. From the antebellum South fraught with slavery and plantations to a city hosting its first integrated prom well into the 2000s, little has changed since the days of Jim Crow. All the problems in Jackson seem to be intertwined, and it's hard to talk about one without tethering it into others. Decades of systematic racism are often blamed for all the above-mentioned problems, like the water crisis, crumbling infrastructure, and even crime. And while the city has been making strides, particularly as racism has been a focal point on the national stage, the city is still reminiscent of the troubled times of its past. In December of 2023, residents of Jackson's NAACP took the city to federal court to try to stop the appointment of judges as opposed to elected officials. Brendan Klein, an attorney representing the NAACP, said the court was created by a discriminatory law that violates the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. Problems arose when Mississippi's majority-white legislature voted during the spring to expand the territory for the state-run Capitol Police to patrol inside Jackson, which was an attempt to help solve the crime issues at hand. Number 3 is poverty. Mississippi is the second poorest state, behind only New Mexico. Twice as many people in Mississippi live in poverty compared to the entire country, and that number is even higher in Jackson, where over 25% of all residents live in poverty. The median household income in Jackson is just under $40,000, compared to $50,000 in the rest of the state, and about $75,000 in the nation as a whole. Of all 50 state capitals, Jackson ranks at number 50 for economic well-being. The capital city that ranked number 1 was Austin, Texas, with a median household income of just over $78,000. That's a disparity of nearly $40,000 per year between Jackson and Austin, which rank lowest and highest, respectively. The city has offered many reasons for its lack of economic success, ranging from systematic racism to government mismanagement to lack of job opportunities. Number 2 is a bad education system. Mississippi is the least educated state and ranks 49th when it comes to K-12 education and 34th when it comes to college education. We cannot deny that Mississippi has some great universities that draw students from far and wide, like Ole Miss. But Ole Miss is a far cry and about 160 miles from Jackson. The Mississippi State Department of Education audited the Jackson public school system and found that violence, poor infrastructure, and many more unsavory findings were prevalent within the district. The audit also found the district in violation of 24 out of the 32 standards that all Mississippi public school districts are required to meet. The report further states that the Office of Accreditation will present evidence to the Commission on School Accreditation, which will determine whether an extreme emergency exists in the JPS that jeopardizes the safety, security, or educational interests of the children enrolled in the schools in the district. It's a bleak report for Jacksonians with kids in the public school system. And number 1 is its health. Jacksonians are over 25% more likely to lack health insurance than the rest of Mississippi, which is already higher than the rest of the nation. It is the 4th most obese state in the nation, with an obesity rate of 39.7%. Food deserts are prevalent statewide, and Jackson is no exception. A food desert is an area where there is little or very limited access to fresh food. Since many Jackson neighborhoods are considered food deserts, with fast food and convenience stores dominating the urban landscape, it's no wonder the city is trailing the nation in health. The city also leads in heart disease, and as already mentioned, the city lacks safe drinking water. Mississippi has moved from the 50th worst state for diabetes into 48th place, but that still leaves residents of Jackson in a precarious health desert, let alone food desert. The city isn't all lost though. Like the mark of any city trying to reinvent itself, Jackson has been sprouting up many craft breweries and local eateries in an effort to revitalize the area. While it may come as a shock to anyone outside of the South to learn that Charleston, Mississippi didn't hold its first integrated prom until 2008, it's important to note that students led the push for change. Actor Morgan Freeman offered to pay for the prom going as far back as 1997, as long as all students could attend. The school finally caved in 2008 thanks to the efforts of the students. So it is promising to see the younger generation taking the reins of change. There are also many museums, particularly the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum in Jackson, that offers a sobering reminder of its past, but also that it's working towards a better future.